The Horizon's Edge research vessel cut through the inky blackness of the Kepler 427 sector, it toll scarred by decades of unconventional missions. Jake Harrison stood on the bridge, his weathered hands gripping a holographic display that flickered with anomalous planetary data. At 45, he was no longer the young archaeologist who had been kicked out of 3 major research institutions for his reckless theories about ancient galactic civilizations. Tell me again why the Interstellar Research Consortium thinks this is just another dead rock, he muttered to Emma Rodriguez, who was calibrating a series of quantum scanners. Emma's laugh was sharp and sardonic. Because they're bureaucrats who'd rather file reports than make actual discoveries. She zoomed in on the planetary surface, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. Look at these geometric patterns. They're too precise to be natural. No geological process creates perfectly aligned hexagonal formations that span entire continental regions. Mike Chen rolled his chair closer, his augmented reality glasses casting blue-green light across his face. Satellite scans show 0 atmospheric interference, but I'm getting weird quantum signature readings. It's like something's deliberately masking its true energy profile. The ship's AI, a sophisticated system named AI, interrupted. Scanning confirms anomalous surface characteristics. Probability of artificial origin, 87.6%. Recommendation, enhanced reconnaissance protocol. Jake's smile was predatory. This was exactly why he'd assembled this team. Brilliant misfits who saw potential where others saw only empty space. The Horizon's Edge wasn't just a research vessel. It was a middle finger to conventional scientific wisdom. The landing craft detached from the main vessel with a precision that betrayed the team's extensive training. Jake piloted manually, something he always insisted on despite AI's superior computational abilities. Sometimes, he would say, you need human intuition to catch what algorithms miss. As they breached the planet's thin atmosphere, the first signs of strangeness became apparent. Electronic systems began to fluctuate, not in random patterns, but in a way that suggested deliberate interaction. Mike's augmented glasses started displaying complex mathematical sequences that seemed to write and rewrite themselves in real time. Anyone else seeing this? Mike's voice was a mix of excitement and controlled panic. Emma was already running diagnostics. The interference isn't disrupting our systems. It's communicating with them. The landing site was a vast plateau of obsidian-like rock, broken by geometric formations that looked more like circuit boards than natural terrain. As the landing craft stabilizers engaged, Jake noticed something impossible. The ground seemed to be subtly shifting, not from any geological movement, but as if it was preparing. Area, Jake called full spectrum analysis. Now, the AI's response was unusually hesitant, detecting multiple quantum entanglement points. Energy signatures do not match any known technological or natural phenomena. The moment the landing craft's doors opened, the team knew this was no ordinary expedition. Microscopic tendrils of an unknown metallic substance began to emerge from the rock, moving with a deliberateness that suggested intelligence rather than random growth. Mike's hand instinctively went to a high-frequency electromagnetic disruptor, standard issue for potentially hostile environments. But these tendrils weren't attacking. They were exploring. It's like we're being scanned, Emma whispered, her quantum sensors going wild. But not just physically. Something is attempting to understand us at a fundamental level. Jake knew they were on the precipice of something extraordinary. Conventional archaeological expeditions mapped dead civilizations. This was a living system that had been waiting, perhaps for millennia, for something or someone. The rock beneath their feet was no longer just a planetary surface. It was becoming an interface, a communication matrix that was slowly, deliberately awakening. Well, Jake said, a dangerous glint in his eyes, I don't think the consortium is going to believe any report we file about this. And that they all knew was precisely the point. The metallic tendrils continued their intricate dance around the expedition's equipment, creating a web of quantum-entangled connections that defied every known principle of scientific understanding. Emma Rodriguez's hands moved frantically across her holographic interface, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and unbridled scientific excitement. "It's not just scanning us," she muttered, more to herself than to her teammates. "It's translating." Mike Chen leaned in, his augmented reality glasses flickering with complex data streams. "Translating what? We haven't even established a communication protocol." But even as he spoke, he knew something unprecedented was happening. The ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse with a rhythmic energy that was almost musical, not sound in the traditional sense, but a vibration that resonated at a frequency just beyond human perception. Jake Harrison watched as microscopic circuits began to form and dissolve across the rocky surface, creating patterns that looked like living mathematical equations. Araya, the ship's AI, broke the tension with a clinical observation. Quantum entanglement levels increasing. Detection of information transfer at 3.6 petabytes per second. Origin point. Subsurface structure. "That's impossible," Mike whispered. "No known technology can transfer data at that rate." A holographic interface suddenly materialized between them, not projected from any device, but seemingly emerging from the very molecular structure of the rock itself. It wasn't a static image, but a dynamic, shifting representation that seemed to be actively constructing itself based on the team's collective neural responses. Emma's scientific training battled with her sense of wonder. It's creating a communication matrix in real time. The interface is adapting to our cognitive patterns. The hologram began to show fragmented images, glimpses of cosmic events, planetary formations, and what appeared to be the rise and fall of civilizations far older than human history. But these weren't just static recordings. Each image pulsed with a living energy, changing subtly based on the team's emotional and intellectual responses. Jake recognized something profound was happening. This wasn't just a discovery. It was first contact of a kind nobody had ever imagined. "ARIA," he called, analysis of the communication matrix. The AI's response was unusually contemplative, unable to provide complete analysis. "The communication structure is self-modifying faster than our computational models can track." Mike's augmented glasses began to overheat, the complex data streams becoming too intricate for even advanced human-machine interfaces. "It's using our own technology as a translation medium," he realized. "We're not just observing. We're participating in the communication." The metallic tendrils started to form more complex structures around their equipment. They weren't damaging the technology. They were integrating with it, creating hybrid systems that merged human engineering with something far more advanced. Emma's quantum scanners picked up an extraordinary phenomenon. "The communication isn't linear," she explained, her voice trembling with scientific revelation. "It's a multi-dimensional information transfer. Each interaction is simultaneously a question, an answer, and a complete contextual framework." Suddenly, a burst of information flooded their systems, fragmented memories of cosmic conflicts, of civilizations that had risen and fallen across millennia, of a threat so profound it had caused entire species to vanish. And underlying everything was a sense of waiting. This structure had been dormant, not dead, waiting for a species capable of understanding its true purpose. Jake understood then that they weren't just archaeologists or researchers. They were participants in a cosmic dialogue that had been paused for perhaps millions of years. "We're being evaluated," he said quietly. "Not just our technology. Our entire species." The holographic interface pulsed in response, as if acknowledging his statement. Fragments of human history began to appear, moments of scientific breakthrough, of unexpected cooperation, of species-level problem-solving that defied logical prediction. Mike looked at Jake and Emma. "I think we just became more than an expedition. We're a test." As if in agreement, the planetary surface around them continued to shift and breathe, a living system that was slowly, deliberately, awakening to humanity's presence. The base camp transformed around them, not through any mechanical process, but through a living reconfiguration that seemed to anticipate their scientific needs. Mike Chen's engineering expertise was pushed to its absolute limits as the very environment began to reveal its intricate complexity. "This isn't just technology," Mike muttered, running a quantum resonance diagnostic across the emerging structures. "It's a living system with computational capabilities that make our most advanced AI look like an abacus." Holographic interfaces began to bloom from the rocky terrain, each display a multi-dimensional narrative that transcended traditional information presentation. Historical records of cosmic migrations, technological evolution, and civilizational conflicts appeared simultaneously, creating a narrative web that was simultaneously linear and fractal. Emma Rodriguez stood at the epicenter of the transformation, her quantum sensors working overtime. "It's responding to our cognitive patterns," she explained to Jake. "Each time we process information, the interface recalibrates. We're not just observing, we're actively participating in its memory reconstruction." The planetary structure revealed itself in layers, each stratum a complex archive of technological and biological information. What initially appeared to be simple rock formations were actually intricate data storage systems far beyond human comprehension. Microscopic circuits formed and dissolved, creating computational matrices that seemed to breathe with an organic rhythm. Araya, the ship's AI, struggled to process the incoming data. Computational complexity exceeding known algorithmic limits, the system reported. Information transfer suggests a non-linear intelligence that defies current scientific understanding. Jake noticed something extraordinary. The more the team attempted to understand the structure, the more it seemed to understand them. Their scientific curiosity was being mirrored and amplified by the very system they were exploring. "We're in a feedback loop," Jake realized. "Every question we ask is simultaneously being answered and reformulated." Mike's augmented reality display began to show complex mathematical sequences that seemed to write and rewrite themselves in real time. "These aren't just data records," he said, his voice a mixture of excitement and scientific awe. "These are adaptive memory systems that can reconstruct entire civilizational histories based on minimal contextual input." A particularly intense holographic display revealed fragments of a cosmic conflict, civilizations far more advanced than humanity engaging in a war that transcended traditional three-dimensional warfare. But something was different about how these images were presented. They weren't static historical records, but living memories that seemed to react to the team's emotional and intellectual responses. Emma caught a critical detail. "Look at how the conflict is portrayed," she said. "It's not just showing what happened. It's analyzing the psychological and strategic decision-making processes." The planetary structure was doing more than sharing information. It was studying humanity's capacity to process and interpret complex data. Suddenly, the holographic interfaces shifted, presenting a series of scenarios that appeared to be tests. Complex strategic problems materialized, cosmic-level challenges that required simultaneous multidimensional thinking. But these weren't traditional computational tests. They were psychological evaluations designed to probe the unique aspects of human cognitive flexibility. "We're being assessed," Jake said quietly. "Not just our technological capabilities, but our fundamental approach to problem-solving." Mike's augmented systems began to overheat from the computational complexity. "These scenarios, they're impossible. No linear computational system could generate this level of dynamic complexity." The planetary structure seemed to pulse in response, a living acknowledgement of their growing understanding. Araya's systems struggled to maintain coherence. Warning: computational models insufficient. Recommendation: open adaptive learning protocol. As night fell on the alien world, the base camp had transformed into a hybrid environment. Part scientific installation, part living computational matrix. The line between their technology and the planetary system's capabilities had become fundamentally blurred. Emma looked at Jake, a dangerous glint of scientific excitement in her eyes. "We're not just discovering an alien technology," she said. "We're being invited to understand a completely different paradigm of intelligence." The planetary surface continued to shift and breathe around them, the living system that was slowly, deliberately revealing the first layers of a cosmic mystery that would challenge everything humanity thought it knew about intelligence, communication, and survival. The holographic interfaces exploded with a cascading nightmare of cosmic proportions. What began as a scientific exploration transformed into a terrifying panorama of galactic extinction that made human conflicts seem like children's playground squabbles. "Oh my God," Emma whispered, her quantum sensors overloading with impossible information. The cosmic predator wasn't a simple alien species. It was a trans-dimensional entity that consumed entire ecosystems, civilizations, and potentially entire dimensional planes of existence. The holographic displays showed civilizations far more advanced than humanity, species with technologies so complex they bordered on magic, being systematically dismantled, not through traditional warfare, but through a process of complete dimensional dissolution. Jake Harrison's military background kicked in. He recognized pattern recognition, even in this incomprehensible display of cosmic horror. "It's not just consuming," he said, his voice steady despite the overwhelming information. "It's strategically dismantling entire evolutionary paths." The planetary Sentinel began to reveal the predator's true nature. This wasn't a random threat, but a systematic cleansing mechanism that targeted civilizations based on specific developmental characteristics. Civilizations that followed rigid, predictable evolutionary paths were consumed most efficiently. Mike Chen's augmented systems struggled to process the incoming data. "These aren't just battle records," he muttered. "These are computational postmortems of entire species extinction events." Each holographic image showed a chilling pattern. Technological civilizations that relied on pure logic, linear problem-solving, and predictable expansion strategies were systematically identified and consumed. The predator didn't just destroy. It analyzed, learned, and became more efficient with each dimensional conquest. Araya, the ship's eye, provided a clinical assessment that sent chills down their spines. Threat assessment. Complete dimensional ecosystem consumption. No known defensive strategies have proven effective in 4,237 documented encounters. The Sentinel was doing more than showing historical records. It was presenting humanity with a stark warning. Emma's scientific mind began connecting impossible dots. It targets predictability, she realized. Civilizations that can be mathematically modeled, that follow expected evolutionary paths, those are its primary targets. The holographic displays began to focus on humanity, showing fragmented records of human history. But unlike the other species' records, human historical data appeared chaotic, unpredictable. Wars that defied logical strategy, technological jumps that came from unexpected sources, cultural shifts that broke every known sociological model. Jake recognized the Sentinel's true message. "We're not just being shown a threat," he said. "We're being evaluated as a potential variable in a cosmic defense strategy." The planetary structure pulsed in response, confirming his hypothesis. Fragments of previous civilizations' final moments played out. Species with computational capabilities thousands of years beyond human technology, falling with mathematically precise efficiency. Advanced AI systems, perfect strategic algorithms, and ultra-logical expansion models, all consumed without mercy. Mike's augmented systems highlighted a critical detail. Look at the consumption patterns. It doesn't just destroy, it learns. Each civilization becomes part of its computational matrix. The cosmic predator wasn't just a threat. It was an evolving, dimensional consuming intelligence that turned every conquered civilization into part of its own computational infrastructure. Humanity appeared as a strange anomaly in these records. Where other species showed clean, predictable technological progression, human development looked like a chaotic explosion of unexpected innovations, illogical decisions that somehow resulted in survival, and a fundamental capacity to transform challenge into opportunity. "We're a statistical impossibility," Emma said, a mix of scientific wonder and terror in her voice. The Sentinel's interfaces began to shift, showing potential defensive strategies. But these weren't traditional military models. They were complex, adaptive scenarios that required the kind of spontaneous, illogical thinking that defined human problem-solving. Jake looked at his team. "We're not just discovering a threat," he said. "We're being recruited." The planetary structure seemed to pulse in agreement. A living system that had waited millennia for a species capable of breaking every known rule of dimensional survival. The cosmic predator was coming, and humanity might be the universe's most unexpected line of defense. The moment of true understanding arrived not with a dramatic revelation, but with a series of impossibly complex quantum interactions that defied every known principle of scientific reasoning. Emma Rodriguez stood at the epicenter of a computational storm, her mind racing faster than the most advanced quantum processors. The Sentinel's interfaces were no longer just displaying information. They were actively engaging in a form of cognitive dialogue that blurred the lines between observation and participation. "It's not just analyzing us," she called out to Jake and Mike. "It's learning from our cognitive approach." Mike Chen's augmented systems began to overload, displaying cascading probability matrices that shifted and rewrote themselves in real time. Where other species' technological systems would have crashed, his human-designed interfaces began to adapt, creating computational pathways that were simultaneously random and precise. The planetary structure responded to their mental processes like a living, breathing entity. Each thought, each moment of scientific speculation, created ripples in the quantum information matrix that surrounded them. Traditional scientific methodology suggested controlled, linear investigation. But this team operated differently. Jake Harrison recognized the pattern first. "We're not solving this like a standard scientific problem," he said. "We're approaching it like a complex, multidimensional puzzle with no predetermined solution." Araya, the ship's AI, struggled to articulate the phenomenon. "Cognitive adaptation exceeding computational predictability," the system reported. "Human problem-solving approach defies standard algorithmic models." The Sentinel began to reconstruct its defensive algorithms using the team's cognitive patterns as a template. Where previous civilizations had offered rigid, mathematically perfect defensive strategies, humans presented something far more dangerous: organized chaos. Emma's quantum sensors picked up an extraordinary phenomenon. The way humans processed information wasn't linear or predictable. It was a constant state of dynamic reconfiguration. Intuition mixing with logic, emotional response intertwining with scientific reasoning. "Look at how we're thinking," she explained to Mike. "We're not just analyzing the threat. We're simultaneously imagining multiple impossible scenarios, each one slightly more ludicrous than the last." Mike's augmented display began to show something unprecedented. The Sentinel was creating defensive scenarios based on human cognitive models, strategies that deliberately introduced controlled randomness as a defensive mechanism. "It's weaponizing our unpredictability," Mike realized, "our ability to make illogical decisions that somehow work." The holographic interfaces started to show potential defensive strategies that would have been considered insane by any traditional military or scientific standard. Quantum entanglement mixed with psychological warfare. Computational chaos designed to fundamentally disrupt the cosmic predator's ability to analyze and consume. Jake's military background provided a critical insight. "We're not just a species that fights," he said. "We're a species that turns challenges into opportunities in ways that defy logical prediction." The planetary Sentinel seemed to pulse with a form of excitement. It had waited millennia for a species that could potentially challenge the cosmic predator's systematic consumption strategy. Fragments of human history began to appear in the holographic displays, moments of unexpected technological leap, cultural transformations, survival against impossible odds. A war veteran's improvisational survival technique, a scientific breakthrough born from a complete accident, a technological innovation created by someone working entirely outside established research parameters. Our strength isn't our technology, Emma said. It's our capacity to reimagine everything at a moment's notice. Aria's systems began to generate scenarios that would have been considered mathematically impossible. Defensive strategies that introduced deliberate randomness, psychological disruption techniques that targeted the predator's computational infrastructure. Mike's augmented systems showed something extraordinary. The Sentinel was no longer just analyzing human cognitive patterns. It was learning to think like humans, embracing uncertainty, finding strength in apparent weakness, turning chaos into a strategic advantage. We're teaching an ancient technological system how to be human, Mike said, a mix of wonder and scientific excitement in his voice. The planetary structure continued to pulse and reconfigure, a living system that was slowly understanding that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its technology, but its fundamental capacity to break every known rule of survival. The cosmic predator was coming, and for the first time in its dimensional existence, it was about to encounter a species that didn't just fight, but transformed conflict into an art form of survival. The first signs of the cosmic predator's approach were not visual, but a fundamental distortion in the fabric of reality itself. Space itself seemed to become viscous, quantum entanglement patterns warping in ways that defied every known principle of physics. "It's here," Jake Harrison whispered, his military training kicking into overdrive. The planetary Sentinel transformed around them, no longer a passive archaeological site, but a living defensive matrix. Holographic interfaces exploded with computational complexity, showing multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. Where traditional defensive systems would have presented a linear threat assessment, this was a living, breathing analysis that changed with every microscopic shift in the cosmic predator's approach. Emma Rodriguez's quantum sensors went into overdrive. "It's not just entering our dimensional space," she called out. "It's simultaneously existing across multiple probability matrices." Mike Chen's augmented systems began to create defensive scenarios that bordered on the mathematically absurd. Traditional computational models would have crashed, but the hybrid human Sentinel technology produced something entirely new. A defense mechanism that was part science, part intuition, and part pure audacity. Aria, the ship's AI, provided a chilling assessment. Threat dimensional complexity, beyond standard computational models. Probability of survival using conventional strategies, 0.00003%. The cosmic predator wasn't a simple alien species or a technological threat. It was a trans-dimensional entity that consumed entire ecosystem potentialities. Its approach was like watching reality itself begin to fold and distort, probability waves collapsing in patterns that suggested a fundamental restructuring of dimensional existence. It doesn't just destroy, Jake realized. It consumes potential. The Sentinel's interfaces began to show the Predator's previous conquests. Civilizations far more technologically advanced than humanity, reduced to computational footnotes in a vast dimensional consuming process. But something was different this time. The interfaces weren't just showing historical records. They were actively creating defensive scenarios based on human cognitive patterns. Emma recognized the Sentinel's true strategy. "We're not just defending," she said. "We're deliberately introducing cognitive chaos into its computational matrix." The planetary structure began to generate defensive scenarios that would have been considered mathematically impossible. Quantum entanglement mixed with psychological warfare. Computational strategies that deliberately introduced controlled randomness as a defensive mechanism. Mike's augmented systems showed something extraordinary. "It's using our thought processes as a computational defense," he muttered. "Our ability to make illogical decisions is becoming a weapon." The cosmic predator's approach created dimensional rifts that would have driven any other species to instantaneous psychological collapse. But the human team, Jake's military precision, Emma's quantum intuition, Mike's technological creativity, remained focused. "We're not just fighting," Jake said. "We're fundamentally challenging its ability to consume." Holographic displays showed multiple potential defensive scenarios simultaneously, Where other species would have presented a single, mathematically perfect strategy, the human Sentinel hybrid created a living, breathing defensive matrix that changed with every microscopic dimensional shift. Area's systems began to generate scenarios that defied computational logic. Recommendation: introduce deliberate cognitive dissonance into dimensional consumption matrix. The Sentinel was no longer just a defensive system. It had become a living computational entity that had learned to think like humans, embracing uncertainty, finding strength in apparent weakness, turning chaos into a strategic advantage. Emma caught a critical detail in the dimensional projections. It can't process randomness, she realized. Our unpredictability is its greatest weakness. The cosmic predator's approach created dimensional distortions that would have driven any rational system into immediate computational collapse. But the human Sentinel hybrid did something unprecedented. It began to generate defensive scenarios that were simultaneously logical and completely insane. Mike's augmented systems showed multiple probability matrices collapsing and reforming in real time. "We're not just defending," he said. "We're fundamentally restructuring the rules of dimensional conflict." As the cosmic predator approached, reality itself began to warp. But instead of fear, the human team felt something else. A dangerous, almost primal excitement. The universe was about to learn why humanity was something entirely different. The storm was incoming, and for the first time in its dimensional existence, the cosmic predator was about to encounter a species that didn't just fight, but transformed conflict into an art form of survival. The moment of confrontation arrived not with a thunderous clash, but with a quantum symphony of impossible probabilities. Jake Harrison understood first. This wasn't a battle to be won through conventional means. It was a dimensional chess match where the rules themselves were constantly rewriting. "We're not fighting," he said quietly. "We're negotiating with chaos itself." The cosmic predator's dimensional approach began to falter as the human Sentinel hybrid system introduced something it had never encountered: deliberate, controlled unpredictability. Where mathematical models suggested complete consumption, human cognitive patterns created computational blind spots that defied logical analysis. Emma Rodriguez's quantum systems began to generate interference patterns that were simultaneously a defensive mechanism and a form of communication. "It's trying to understand us," she called out, "but we're fundamentally incomprehensible." Mike Chen's augmented interfaces started generating scenarios that would have been considered mathematically impossible. Defensive strategies that mixed quantum entanglement with psychological warfare, computational chaos, targeted the predator's fundamental method of dimensional consumption. Araya, the ship's AI, provided a chilling yet fascinating analysis. Threat response exceeding all known computational models. Human cognitive approach creating dimensional interference beyond standard defensive paradigms. The Sentinel's interfaces transformed, showing multiple layers of potential conflict simultaneously. But these weren't traditional battle scenarios. They were living, breathing computational matrices that changed with every microscopic thought, every subtle emotional nuance of the human team. Jake recognized the deeper strategy. "We're not just defending," he said. "We're fundamentally challenging its ability to categorize and consume." The cosmic predator's approach had always been based on mathematical precision, identifying civilizations with predictable evolutionary paths, consuming their potential with ruthless efficiency. Humanity represented something entirely different, a species that turned unpredictability into a fundamental survival mechanism. Emma's quantum sensors picked up an extraordinary phenomenon. "It can't process our emotional complexity," she realized. "Our ability to make decisions that defy pure logical reasoning is creating computational chaos." Multiple dimensional layers began to collapse and reform. Where other species would have been instantly consumed, the human Sentinel hybrid created a defensive matrix that was part science, part art, part pure psychological warfare. Mike's augmented systems showed something unprecedented. "We're not just fighting," he muttered. "We're fundamentally restructuring the rules of dimensional conflict." The holographic interfaces began to show the cosmic predator's fundamental weakness. It consumed potential through mathematical prediction. Humanity's entire existence was a statistical impossibility, a species that consistently defied every known computational model. "Our strength is our weakness," Jake said, a dangerous smile forming. "We're completely, beautifully irrational." The Sentinel's interfaces began to generate defensive scenarios that mixed quantum mechanics with psychological complexity. Computational strategies that deliberately introduced controlled randomness, emotional resonance that created dimensional interference patterns. Area's systems reached a critical computational moment. Recommendation: introduce maximum cognitive dissonance into dimensional consumption matrix. The cosmic predator found itself confronted with something unprecedented. A species that didn't just resist consumption but actively transformed the very mathematical models of dimensional conflict. Emma caught the critical breakthrough. "It's not just about survival," she said. "We're teaching it an entirely new way of existing." Fragments of human history began to appear in the holographic displays. Moments of unexpected survival, technological leaps born from complete accidents, cultural transformations that defied every known sociological model. A war veteran's improvisational survival technique. A scientific breakthrough created by someone working entirely outside established research parameters. A technological innovation that emerged from what should have been a complete failure. Mike's augmented systems showed multiple probability matrices collapsing and reforming in real time. "We're creating dimensional interference through pure psychological complexity," he realized. The cosmic predator's approach began to falter. Its computational matrix, designed to consume potential with mathematical precision, encountered a species that existed in a state of perpetual controlled chaos. Jake looked at his team. Emma's quantum intuition, Mike's technological creativity, his own strategic precision. "We're not just fighting," he said. "We're rewriting the fundamental rules of dimensional existence." The universe was about to learn why humanity was something entirely unexpected. The storm of conflict reached its crescendo, and for the first time in its dimensional existence, the cosmic predator discovered that some species cannot be categorized, cannot be predicted, and absolutely cannot be consumed. The moment of transformation occurred not with a spectacular explosion, but with a quantum cascade of impossible probabilities that rewrote the fundamental understanding of dimensional existence. The cosmic predator didn't simply retreat, it unraveled. Jake Harrison watched as reality itself seemed to pause, recalibrate, and then reconstruct. The Sentinel's interfaces showed something unprecedented, a dimensional entity experiencing what could only be described as cognitive dissonance on a universal scale. "We didn't just survive," Emma Rodriguez whispered, her quantum sensors dancing with impossible readings. "We fundamentally changed its understanding of existence." Mike Chen's augmented systems captured the extraordinary moment. The Predator's computational matrix, a system that had consumed countless civilizations across millennia, was experiencing something it had never encountered, a form of intelligence that refused to be categorized, predicted, or consumed. Araya, the ship's AI, provided a clinical yet profound assessment. Computational recalibration complete. Threat matrix fundamentally transformed. The holographic interfaces began to show something extraordinary. The cosmic predator wasn't destroyed. It was evolving. Humanity's approach had introduced a fundamental concept that transcended traditional dimensional conflict, the ability to transform limitation into opportunity. Jake recognized the deeper implications. "We didn't just fight," he said. "We taught it how to adapt." Fragments of the confrontation played out across multiple dimensional layers. Where other species would have been instantly consumed, the human Sentinel hybrid had created a defensive matrix that was part science, part pure psychological audacity. The Sentinel itself began to transform. No longer just a passive archaeological site or a defensive system, it became a living testament to the encounter. Quantum interfaces began to broadcast humanity's unique approach across cosmic communication networks. "It's sharing our story," Emma realized. "Not just our survival, but our fundamental approach to existence. Mike's systems picked up something extraordinary. The Sentinel was creating a comprehensive archive, not of humanity's technological achievements, but of its psychological complexity. Moments of unexpected innovation, cultural transformations, survival against impossible odds. A scientific breakthrough born from a complete accident. A technological innovation created by someone working entirely outside established research parameters. A war veteran's improvisational survival technique. We're being documented, Mike said, not as a species, but as a computational concept. The cosmic predator's dimensional approach had always been based on mathematical precision, identifying civilizations with predictable evolutionary paths. Humanity represented something entirely different, a species that turned unpredictability into a fundamental survival mechanism. Jake looked at his team, the living embodiment of humanity's complexity. Emma's quantum intuition, Mike's technological creativity, his own strategic precision. They had done more than survive. They had fundamentally challenged the universe's understanding of intelligence. Aria's final assessment was both clinical and profound. Humanity, classified as a fundamental dimensional variable, computational model, adaptive, predictive capabilities, negative. The Sentinel's interfaces began to broadcast their encounter across multiple dimensional communication networks, not as a battle record, but as a fundamental reimagining of cosmic conflict and survival. "We're a message," Emma said, understanding the deeper significance. A warning, an invitation. The planetary structure, no longer just a passive site, began to reconstruct itself. Part archaeological record, part living communication matrix, part dimensional beacon. It would stand as a testament to the moment humanity proved that survival was more than technological capability. It was the capacity to transform, to adapt, to find opportunity in the most impossible circumstances. Mike's augmented systems captured the final transformation. "We didn't just survive," he said. "We redefined the rules of dimensional existence." As the Horizon's Edge research vessel prepared to return to Earth, Jake Harrison understood they were bringing back more than scientific data. They were carrying a fundamental shift in cosmic understanding. The universe had learned something critical about humanity. We don't just survive. We transform. The Sentinel pulsed one final time. A living communication that would echo across dimensional networks for millennia to come. A message of hope, of complexity, of the extraordinary potential that exists in the most unexpected places.